When the iPhone 8 went on sale September 22nd, 2017, its sales were not nearly as good as the iPhone 7s were the year before. This is judging by the far shorter lines outside of the Apple stores around the world. Why is this? Well, some people say it's because of bad reviews that the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 8 Plus have received. But a lot of people say that the real reason is because a lot of people are waiting for the iPhone 10 to come out in November. Earlier in September, Apple made the unusual move of announcing two generations of smartphones at the same time. They announced the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus, but then they also announced the iPhone 10. The iPhone 10 is supposedly better than the 8 and 8 Plus, and one of the biggest differences is the iPhone 10 will use OLED displays instead of LCD displays. What's ironic is, in order to manufacture the OLED displays for the iPhone 10, Apple is relying on Samsung, which is its biggest competitor in smartphones. In fact, Samsung is the only company in the world that sells more smartphones than Apple. The OLED display on Samsung's Galaxy S8 phones has gotten very good reviews, and Apple has decided that Samsung is the best company to produce OLED displays for its iPhone. Samsung agreed to make OLED displays for its biggest rival, but they did say that they would not give the iPhone priority over the Galaxy S8 phones, and said that they would have to expand capacity to meet the demands for OLED displays for Apple's phones. For this reason, Apple had to postpone the launch of the iPhone 10 until November, when they usually like to release new iPhones in September, as they have done with the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus. It does make sense that the iPhone 10 is cannibalizing early iPhone 8 sales, because the people who line up outside the Apple Store to buy a phone on the first day that it comes out are usually the kind of people that like to brag that they have the top-of-the-line iPhone. But if you buy the iPhone 8, you can only say that you have the top-of-the-line iPhone for less than a month and a half before the iPhone 10 comes out. A lot of people who have downloaded iOS 11 have reported that it has caused a major drain on their battery life, and this does seem to be the case. Research by the security research firm Wandera concluded that iOS 11 causes a loss of over 50% of the iPhones and iPads' battery life, as you can see from this chart. They claim that with iOS 10, the average iPhone and iPad, when being used moderately to heavily, will drain from 100% charge to 0% charge in 240 minutes. But when using iOS 11, it drains to 0% charge in just 96 minutes. Now, I'm a little bit skeptical of this data. A lot of people have been reporting that iOS 11 drains their battery life, but 96 minutes or just an hour and a half of usage doesn't seem like a lot. It seems like it's not quite that bad. Also, this data does seem to amalgamate a bunch of different models of iPhones and iPads together. I personally have an iPhone 7 Plus and the newest iPad, at least the 9.7-inch iPad that came out in 2017, sometimes called the 5th generation iPad, even though it's technically not the 5th generation. What I have noticed is I've noticed that iOS 11 doesn't really seem to drain the battery life on my iPhone 7 Plus that much, but it does seem to cause a loss of battery life on my iPad. I've also noticed that most of the people who have iPhones that complain that there's a serious drain on their battery life with iOS 11 are people using the iPhone 6s and earlier iPhone models. What's worse is, according to Apple, the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 8 Plus will only have the same amount of battery life as the iPhone 7 and the iPhone 7 Plus, respectively. The reason for this is, even though Apple did boast that the new A11 Bionic processor, which powers the iPhone 8, 8 Plus, and iPhone 10, does use 70% less power than the A10 processor, which powers the iPhone 7 and iPhone 7 Plus. Apple has indeed made the battery smaller in the iPhone 8 and the 8 Plus. iFixit actually opened a iPhone 8 and they found that its battery has 6.96 watt hours capacity compared to the iPhone 7's battery, which had 7.45 watt hours. So it seems that even though the processor on the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus is more energy efficient, Apple has responded by making the battery smaller so that the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus won't get any more battery life than the iPhone 7 or 7 Plus. It seems kind of odd that Apple would decide to make the battery smaller and smaller, because part of the reason why Apple claimed they got rid of the headphone jack was to make room for a larger battery. But I haven't heard about anybody saying, hey, it's a really fantastic thing that Apple got rid of the headphone jack, and I'm not so sure it was a good idea to do so. The good news is Apple does say on their website that the upcoming iPhone 10 will have about 2 hours more battery life than the iPhone 7. So it should have more battery life than the iPhone 8 as well. And this may or may not be because the battery will actually be larger in the iPhone 10. For one thing, the OLED display, which will be featured on the iPhone 10, is more energy efficient than the LCD display on the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus. So a lot of the improvement in the battery life on the iPhone 10 may simply come from the fact that the OLED display will use less power and not because the iPhone 10 will have a larger battery. Hopefully, in the future, Apple will update the iOS operating system, iOS 11, to make it more energy efficient and less of a drain on the battery, since the reports that it could cut the battery life in half are pretty concerning. In the meantime, you could put your phone on low battery mode, although that does have some drawbacks. It might help improve your overall battery life. Other studies seem to show that the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus battery life isn't nearly as bad. According to Tom's Guide, the iPhone 8 Plus lasts for 11 hours and 16 minutes when using LTE, and LTE does drain the battery quite a lot, which is even longer than the Samsung Galaxy Note 8 lasts, although just a little bit longer. But it does seem like it's older iPhones, particularly the iPhone 6S, that has had serious battery life problems with iOS 11. And like I said, it also seems to be the iPad that has had problems with it, including the newest iPad that came out in 2017. Another positive about the iPhone 8, 8 Plus, and iPhone 10 is that all three of them will feature fast charging. Some Android phones have had this feature, including the Galaxy S7 and S8, but so far the iPhones have not had this feature until the iPhone 8 and iPhone 10. In order to use fast charging, you have to use a USB-C cable to Lightning port and a USB-C power supply. Now, neither of these come with the iPhone 8, 8 Plus, or iPhone 10. Apple does sell a USB-C cable for around $29 and a USB-C power supply, 29 watts, for around $50, and you can get ones with higher wattages for more money. However, you can also buy third-party manufacturers' cable and power supplies that won't cost as much as the ones manufactured by Apple. Apple boasts that you can charge your phone from 0 to 50% in about a half an hour using fast charging, and that's about twice as fast as you can charge your phone using ordinary charging. Independent studies have actually confirmed that the charging is about twice as fast, with the phone charging in about 2 hours using fast charging, that's from 0 to 100%, and a little bit more than 4 hours using ordinary charging. The reason why it doesn't charge fully in 1 hour is because as a lithium battery gains charge, it's the speed at which you can charge it slows down. So if you like this video, go ahead and give it a like. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel, click the bell icon for notifications, and together we shall take over the world. I upload 6 to 8 videos a month. I also broadcast on YouNow on Zorkbid123, and you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Zorkbid123.